What if a single word, spoken over wine in the cold hours after a feast, could bend the whole shape of a kingdom? What if the fate of an entire realm turned not on a battle, not on a marriage, but on the quiet impulse of a grieving king who had drunk too much and remembered too well? Consider the courtyard of Winterfell on the day the royal party arrives. The Stark children stand arranged in a careful line, each in their place, each true-born and named and accounted for. And then there is the other one, the boy who stands apart, not in the line, not quite outside it, positioned, as bastards learn to position themselves, at the margin where he can be seen but not counted, present but never quite belonging. Jon Snow watches the king dismount with the flat, assessing gaze of someone who has learned early that the world will not offer him anything, and that he must therefore study it closely to take what little slips through. Robert Baratheon notices him. This is the first move on the board, and Robert does not even know he is playing. The king's eye, dulled by years of wine and appetite, sharpens on the quiet, dark-haired boy, the way a soldier's eye sharpens on a familiar face in a crowd. There is something there. Robert cannot name it. He does not try to, but the impression lodges, and impressions in a king become intentions, and intentions become demands. That night, the two old friends descend into the crypts, where Robert lays a hand on cold stone and speaks of the dead. And later, in the warmth of Ned's solar, with a cup in his fist, the king circles back. Whose was he? The question comes lazily, wrapped in the easy cruelty of a man who has never had to guard his tongue. Some tavern girl? Some fisherman's daughter? He wants a name, a story, a woman to hang the boy upon. Ned Stark gives him nothing. Watch how Ned does this. Not with a lie, which could be caught, but with silence, which cannot. He offers the shape of shame without its substance. He lowers his eyes as a man does who wishes to bury a thing, and he asks his friend to let it lie. And Robert, who loves Ned, who trusts Ned above all men living, reads the silence as he is meant to read it. A man's private dishonor, a wound best left unprobed. He lets it rest. He does not know that the silence is not shame at all, but a promise, made years ago in a room full of blood, whispered to a dying sister, whose face he has kept behind his eyes ever since. This is the delicate architecture Ned has built, and into it, the next day, Robert drives a hammer. At the feast, warm with meat and song, the king does not merely ask Ned to be his hand. He asks for the boy. He wants Jon Snow brought south, not to the wall, not to a life of northern scorn and second son's contempt, but to King's Landing, to be raised among fighting men, to be given a soldier's making. The boy has the wolf blood, Robert declares, loud enough for half the hall to hear. A soldier's eyes. He deserves better than the black. And now watch Ned Stark's mind move, because everything hinges here. Refuse, and Robert will wonder why. Refuse too hard, protect a bastard too fiercely, and the king's slow curiosity will wake into something dangerous. Why should a man risk offending his king to keep a base-born son buried in the frozen north? The question, once asked, leads down a road Ned cannot allow anyone to walk. So refusal carries its own peril. Refusal draws the eye. But agreement means placing Lyanna's son within arm's reach of the one man in all the world who would kill him without a moment's hesitation if the truth were ever known. Agreement means surrendering the boy to the lion's den, to Cersei's court, to 1,000 watching eyes. Ned turns it over the way a man turns a blade to catch the light, and slowly, terribly, he sees the shape of it. A boy hidden in plain sight is sometimes safer than a boy hidden in the dark. A ward of the king is a boy no one questions, and the wall, that other path, that living death Jon has half chosen for himself, is no gift at all. Ned has spent years telling himself the black was Jon's freedom. He knows now it was only his exile made bearable. So he goes to the boy. The conversation is quiet, and it costs them both. Jon speaks of wanting a place in the world, a name that means something, a life that is not merely tolerated. He says he would rather die a sworn brother than live as no one. And Ned, hearing his sister in the boy's stubborn hunger, understands that the wall was never Jon's desire, but his surrender. He offers him the other road instead, the south, the king's household, a chance. Jon Snow abandons the black. He does not yet know what he has agreed to. Neither, in truth, does Ned. But the peace has moved, the board has changed, and somewhere in the north, a promise made to a dead woman begins, very slowly, to unravel. What happens to a boy when the king of the Seven Kingdoms decides he is worth noticing? Consider the arithmetic of it. Jon Snow has spent his entire life measuring the distance between himself and every table he was permitted to sit at. He learned early that the space allotted to him was conditional, that his welcome ended precisely where legitimacy began. And now, on the King's Road, riding south beneath a banner that is not his father's, that arithmetic has changed in a single stroke. He rides among the Baratheon men. Not the Stark household, not the wagons of servants and northern retainers who know him and know how far he may be spoken to. He rides where the king rides, and the king, for reasons Jon cannot yet name, keeps calling him forward. Robert Baratheon likes the boy. This is the first fact of the journey, and everything else will arrange itself around it. The king rides badly now, sweating through fine cloth, a great ruin of a man perched atop a horse that strains beneath him. But when he speaks of the trident, something older surfaces in the wreckage. He tells Jon how the water ran red past Harrenhal, how Rhaegar's rubies scattered across the shallows like drops of blood made solid, how the weight of the warhammer felt in the moment it came down. He hands Jon a skin of wine and laughs when the boy coughs on it, and calls for more, and drinks deeper than any man Jon has known. He teaches Jon the particular arithmetic of a soldier's night. Drink until the grief goes quiet. Drink until the anger has nowhere left to go. Jon watches him do this and understands, slowly, that the songs lied. Not entirely. The Robert of the songs existed once, on that riverbank, for the length of a single swing. The man beside him has spent 15 years mourning a woman who was never his, and drowning a kingdom he never wanted in the bottom of a cup. Jon absorbs it all, the grief, the rage, the strange sudden tenderness the king shows him, as if Jon were a debt Robert did not know he owed. And beneath his own confusion runs a colder current he does not examine too closely. He is being seen. For the first time, he is being seen not as Ned Stark's shame, but as a person of consequence. The pull of it is enormous. It is also, though he cannot yet articulate this, a leash. Arya finds him on the fourth night, slipping between the fires, the way she slips past every rule set before her. Their farewell is a strange thing, spoken by two people who are not truly parting. They will both reach King's Landing. They will both live within the same walls. And yet Arya understands, with the terrible clarity children sometimes possess, that the Jon who arrives will belong to a different world than she does. He will dine in the king's hall. She will be sent to her needlework and her septa. The gulf is not distance, it is station. She grips his sleeve and does not say what she is afraid of, and he ruffles her hair and does not promise what he cannot keep. The moment costs them both. Sansa keeps her distance entirely. To Sansa, Jon's elevation is not a marvel. It is an embarrassment. She has spent her whole life understanding the shape of a proper family, the clean lines of legitimacy and courtesy, and Jon has always been the smudge upon that shape. Now the smudge rides with the king and speaks with the king and threatens, by his very presence, to trail her father's dishonor into the golden court she has dreamed of since girlhood. She is going south to be near Prince Joffrey. She is going south to become the lady the songs promised her, and her half-brother's sudden prominence complicates every clean story she has told herself. She looks away when he passes. It is a small cruelty. It will not be the last. And watching all of it, from the cool shadow of her wheelhouse, is the Queen. Cersei Lannister misses nothing. She has learned to read her husband the way a moneylender reads a debtor, and she reads him now with cold precision. Robert's fondness for the bastard is not affection. It is an insult. It is one more reminder that her husband gives his warmth freely to everything except the woman he married. But Cersei does not deal in wounded feelings. She deals in threats. And a boy the king has taken a liking to is a threat by definition. A bastard elevated is a bastard with ambitions. A ward of the king is a piece placed near the board's center for reasons no one has bothered to explain to her. She does not know yet what use Robert intends. That is precisely what troubles her. So she summons the man who does her quiet work, and she gives her instruction in a voice pitched low and even. Watch the Stark bastard. Learn his habits. Learn who he speaks to and what he wants. She does not say more. She does not need to. The machinery turns, and far ahead on the King's Road, laughing at some jest of the king's, Jon Snow rides toward a city that has already begun, silently, to move against him. The Red Keep receives him the way a body receives a splinter. It does not reject him outright. It closes around him, quietly, testing whether he can be absorbed or must be worked loose. And the first sign of trouble comes not from any drawn blade, but from a matter of stone and space. Jon Snow is given chambers near the royal apartments, not the servants' warren beneath the towers, not the crowded rooms where lesser wards and hostages are stacked like cordwood. He is placed close to the king, close to the throne, close to the beating heart of the realm's power. And every courtier who learns of this understands its meaning at once, because in a court built entirely of proximity, distance is the only true currency, and Jon has been handed a fortune he never asked for. Consider what a room can say. A room says who matters. A room says who the king wishes near him, when he wakes and when he sleeps. And a bastard, placed in the ring of chambers reserved for the highborn and the beloved, is a bastard the king has declared, without words, to be worth something. The ladies whisper it behind their fans. The lords repeat it over wine, turning it, weighing it, wondering what the king intends, and whether they should intend the same. Nobody knows the answer. That is what makes it dangerous. An unexplained favor is the most valuable thing in King's Landing, because it can be sold to anyone willing to invent a reason for it. If you're enjoying this alternate history of Westeros so far, please consider subscribing, because I upload new stories every single day. Now let's continue with the story. Two men take particular note. They do not compare their observations, for they never compare anything, but they arrive at the same conclusion by different roads. Varys, who trades in the things men whisper when they believe themselves alone, files the boy away as a piece not yet in play, a northern bastard with the blood of Winterfell and the ear of the king, useful precisely because no one has yet decided what he is for. And Petter Baelish, who has spent a lifetime learning that the most profitable investments are the ones others overlook, watches Jon walk the corridors and thinks of the North, of Catelyn Stark, of debts long past and futures not yet written. Neither man moves against him. Both simply watch. In this city, watching is the first act of possession. Then Robert, who ruins careful things by loving them too loudly, sends the boy into the training yard among the sons of the great houses. And here, the whispers become something sharper. Because Jon can fight, Ned Stark's master-at-arms taught him well, and the North teaches its boys to endure cold and pain and the long grinding labor of discipline. And when Jon takes up a practice sword, the difference is visible to every trained eye in the yard. He is not showy. He wastes nothing. He does not reach for glory the way the highborn boys do, swinging for applause. He fights to win and stops when winning is done. And this economy, this quiet competence, earns him something rarer than praise. It earns him the attention of Sir Barristan Selmy. The old knight has watched 1,000 boys pretend to be men. He knows the sound of talent and the sound of noise, and the bastard makes the first sound and none of the second. So Barristan begins, in small ways, to teach him a word about footing, a correction of the grip, the quiet, honest guidance of a man who has nothing to sell and no leverage to gain, which makes him, in all of King's Landing, very nearly unique. Jon does not know how rare an honest mentor is. He will learn, but respect breeds resentment as surely as sunlight breeds shadow, and no shadow falls longer than the one cast by Prince Joffrey. Consider the boy's position. His father praises a low-born stranger in the yard, while sparing his own son little more than contempt. Every kind word Robert gives the bastard is a coin taken from Joffrey's purse, and Joffrey has never in his life been asked to earn what he believes is owed him. So he provokes. He insults Jon's mother, whom Jon does not know. He insults the North, the cold, the bastard's blood, the bastard's face. And Jon, who has swallowed such words his entire life, simply lets them fall. He does not answer. He does not rise. His silence is its own kind of wall, and Joffrey, unable to breach it, does the only thing a boy who has never faced consequence will do. He draws steel, live steel, bright and real, swung in childish fury before the whole yard. What happens next takes less time than it takes to describe. Jon does not strike him. Jon disarms him, cleanly, with the calm efficiency Barristan has been sharpening, and the prince's sword rings against the flagstones, while the prince himself stands empty-handed and gaping before half the court. Robert's laughter booms across the yard, like a thunderclap of pure delight. Barristan says nothing, but the corner of his mouth moves, and Cersei, watching from above, feels the ground shift beneath her house. The bastard has humiliated the future king, publicly, bloodlessly, unforgivably. She does not shout. She simply begins, in silence, to count the ways this boy will have to be removed. What if the most dangerous thing a man can inherit is not a throne, nor a crown, nor even a secret, but a question left unfinished by a dead man he trusted? Ned Stark inherits precisely that. Jon Arryn died reaching for something, some thread half pulled from a tapestry no one else could see, and the reaching killed him. Ned understands this the way a soldier understands a battlefield already lost. He steps into the role of hand, and the first thing he steps into is the shape of a question with sharp edges. The question is simple, the answer is not. Jon Arryn had been visiting armorers and reading old books and asking after a bastard boy in a brothel, and none of it made sense until you laid the pieces beside one another and let the pattern emerge. Ned lays them out. He is not a subtle man, but he is a patient one, and patience in King's Landing is its own kind of blade. He reads the book Arryn read. He notes the lineages recorded there. Black of hair, black of hair, black of hair, generation upon generation of Baratheon stags, and then the golden children of the Queen, and no black among them at all. He does not finish the thought. He does not need to. And here the game turns strange, because the boy Ned brought south with him, the boy Robert claims as his own foster son, moves through the Red Keep like water through stone. Jon Snow is invisible in the way that servants and bastards and quiet boys are invisible. He hears things. He does not seek to hear them, but they come to him regardless, drifting through open doors and half-shut casements, fragments of Lannister voices speaking as though no one who matters could possibly be listening. A word about debts, a word about the king's drinking, a name spoken with contempt. Jon carries these fragments to Ned the way a boy carries stones from a riverbed, not knowing their worth, only that his father's eyes sharpen when he sets them down. His father, that word sits between them like a coal. Ned watches Jon report what he has heard, and he feels the pull of two obligations tearing in opposite directions. He wants to warn the boy. He wants to say, "This place will eat you. Curiosity here is fatal. The things you overhear are not games." And he says some of this. He tells Jon that King's Landing is a nest of vipers dressed as courtiers, that a careless word can end a life, that the boy must guard his tongue as he guards his sword. He confides the danger. He withholds the reason. He tells Jon everything except the one truth that would explain everything. And Jon, hungry as he has always been for the whole of his father, rather than the careful portion offered him, feels the withholding like a wall he cannot climb. So he turns, without quite deciding to turn, toward the man who withholds nothing. Robert claps him on the shoulder and calls him son, and means it in the loud, unguarded way that Robert means everything. Robert does not measure his affection out in careful thimblefuls. Robert pours it, and Jon, who has spent his life at the edge of Catelyn Stark's cold table, drinks. He does not understand why the king loves him. He only understands that the king does, plainly and without reservation, and that this warmth is easier to stand in than his own father's guarded regard. The distance between Ned and his son does not close during these weeks. It widens, and Ned feels it widen and does not know how to stop it without speaking the very truth he has sworn never to speak. Cersei watches all of this. Cersei watches everything. She comes to Ned in the Godswood, or near enough to it, and she speaks in the language of courtesy that conceals a knife. She tells him that he is new to the capital, that men who are new often mistake curiosity for cleverness, that the previous hand grew curious and now feeds the worms of the Vale. She does not threaten him. She observes, aloud, the fates of curious men. She smiles when she says it. And Ned, who has already found the pattern in the book, understands that she has found the pattern of his understanding, and that they are now two players who have each seen the other's hand, and neither has laid down a card. But it is the boy who occupies her most private hours. Robert's bastards are legion, scattered and forgettable, and she has never troubled herself with any of them. This one is different. This one the king keeps close, at his table, at his hunts. This one the king loves in a manner too particular, too pointed, too much like a man loving something he has chosen, rather than merely spilled. She sends her maester to look at the boy, under some invented pretext. She has him note the shape of the jaw, the black of the hair, the set of the eyes. She asks about the mother. She asks, and each answer she receives folds into a suspicion she cannot yet name, but can no longer set aside. And in the cool arithmetic of her fear, she begins, quietly, to wonder just how much the king has never told her. What if the boy who was never meant to leave Winterfell now rides at the king's right hand through the green shadow of the Kingswood? And what if that single accident of favor is enough to bend the course of a dying reign? Robert had insisted upon it. There had been argument, of a sort, though argument with Robert was less a matter of persuasion than of endurance, and Ned had endured and lost. The king wanted the boy in the field. He wanted to see whether the quiet child he had kept at his table for years could do more than watch, whether there was iron in him beneath all that northern stillness. And so Jon rides beneath the old oaks, with the royal party strung out around him, a boy given a spear and a horse and a purpose, and he does not yet understand that he has been placed, quite by chance, in exactly the right position to change everything. The camp that night is loud with wine and boasting. Robert drinks the way he does all things, enormously, and as the fire burns low he talks, and the talk turns, as it always does, to the dead. He speaks of the Targaryens with a hatred that has not cooled in 17 years. He speaks of dragons burned into the walls of the Red Keep, of a mad king laughing, of children he cannot name without his hands closing into fists. And then he speaks of Lyanna. He speaks of her the way a man speaks of a wound that never healed. And Jon, sitting near the fire, feels something turn over inside him that he has no words for, a discomfort that is not quite grief and not quite recognition, but sits somewhere between them, unnamed and unshakable. He does not know why the name Lyanna reaches into his chest and closes a hand around his heart. He only knows that it does. Elsewhere in that camp, another calculation is quietly unfolding. Lancel Lannister carries the strong wine, and he carries it under instruction, and the instruction is simple. Keep the king's cup full, keep the king's blood thick with drink, and let the boar do what the queen dares not. It is a plan built upon the certainty that Robert hunts drunk and dies drunk, and it is a good plan, elegant in its deniability, invisible in its execution. What it does not account for is the boy. Consider the geometry of the morning. The king, heavy with wine, wading into the brush after the great boar. His retinue scattered, slow, half-blind with their own celebration, and Jon Snow, positioned some distance to the flank, sober, alert, watching the tree line with the patience Ned's household drilled into him. The boar breaks cover. Robert does not see it. His men do not see it. But Jon sees it, sees the black bulk of it surging toward the king, and he shouts, one word, a warning flung across the clearing, and Robert turns. He turns. That is the whole of the difference. A drunk man who turns takes the tusks in the side rather than the belly. Robert is gored terribly. The flesh opened along his ribs, and he goes down roaring, but he goes down alive. He does not bleed out on the forest floor, as another version of this morning would have had him do. He is carried back to King's Landing, broken but breathing, and the plan that was meant to be perfect has instead produced a wounded king and a witness who saw the boar and was not too drunk to remember it. In the Red Keep, Robert lingers. The maesters cut and stitch and give him milk of the poppy, and the wound sours, as such wounds do, and everyone who matters understands that the king is dying by degrees. And it is here, in a chamber thick with the smell of blood and dream and rot, that Robert summons Ned and summons Jon and does the thing that no faction in the city has prepared for. He legitimizes the boy before witnesses, before the maester and the Kingsguard and the assembled lords who crowd the doorway. Robert declares Jon Snow to be Jon Baratheon, trueborn now by royal decree, given the name not by blood but by earning, by the loyalty that put the boy in the right place at the right moment with the right word upon his tongue. He says the boy saved his life, and the boy will carry his name. He says it with the last of his strength, and the words fall upon the chamber like stones into still water, and the ripples reach every corner of a kingdom that had counted its Baratheons and found, suddenly, one more. Then Robert slips back beneath the poppy's tide, and his eyes close, and the men in that room are left staring at a boy who is no longer a bastard and no longer nothing, a boy who now stands, however faintly, within reach of a throne. Ned's face is stone, but behind the stone, the arithmetic has already begun, because he knows what this boy is. He knows the name that is not Baratheon, and he understands, with a cold that reaches into his bones, that Robert has just placed his greatest secret at the very center of the board, in full view, with every player now turning to look. What if a dying man's last generosity became the most dangerous inheritance in the realm? What if a single decree, spoken in fever and gratitude, unmade an entire careful architecture of murder and ambition? Cersei Lannister understands this before the poppy has finished pulling Robert under. She stands in that chamber and she does the arithmetic too, though hers runs along a different axis than Ned's, and where his answer is dread, hers is fury. For years she has counted the Baratheons and found them wanting, a drunk king who could not love her, a brother in Renly, soft and scheming, who wanted the crown for the wearing of it and the games it would allow, a brother in Stannis, gone to his rock, rigid and unloved and dangerous only because he was righteous, and her own children, who were not Baratheons at all, whose golden hair told a story she had spent years teaching the court not to read. That was the shape of the board. That was the count she had memorized. And now, into the ledger she had balanced so precisely, the king had added a line she did not write. A boy, grown, capable, blooded in the king's own service, named by royal word before witnesses of standing. She moves quickly, because she must. A decree exists only so long as its parchment survives, and parchment burns. She sends her people to find the document, to question whether it was ever signed at all, to spread the word through every corridor that a delirious king had rewarded a bastard's loyalty with a title that meant nothing, that could mean nothing, because bastards are bastards, and no fever changes blood. She is not wrong about the blood. She is only wrong about which blood the boy carries. And this is the exquisite cruelty of the moment. The thing Ned sees and she cannot. They are both fighting over the wrong lie. Because Ned knows the name that is not Baratheon. Ned knows that beneath Robert's decree, beneath the gratitude and the legitimization, there sleeps a truth more explosive than any of them can afford to speak. The realm now believes Jon is a Baratheon, a stag by royal word, but he is a dragon by birth, the last true-born son of Rhaegar, and every hour the secret holds is an hour the boy lives, and every hour the lie holds is an hour the coming crisis grows teeth. Two truths that cannot both survive. Ned turns them over in his mind through the long nights, and finds no arrangement of them that does not end in blood. Renly comes to him first. Renly, all charm and quiet urgency, who leans close in the hands solar, and speaks of children in a tower who should not sit a throne. Seize them, he says. Seize Cersei's brood before Robert dies, and put a true stag on the Iron Throne, and let the realm rally to a name it trusts. He does not say which stag. He does not need to. And Ned, who hears the offer for what it is, refuses it, because to move against children in the dark is to become the thing he came south to stop. Littlefinger comes next, because Littlefinger always comes next. He speaks of gold and of the gold cloaks, of how the city watch is a thing that can be purchased, how loyalty in King's Landing is not sworn but rented. He offers Ned the means to hold the city when Robert falls. He offers it with a smile that reaches nowhere near his eyes. And Ned, weighing the man, distrusting the man, nonetheless sees no other lever within reach. And this is precisely the trap. For the lever that a liar hands you is a lever he controls. All the while, Jon stands at the center, a boy who wanted only to serve, a boy who has become, by no design of his own, a piece that every faction reaches for. Cersei wants him erased. Renly wants him tamed or claimed. Littlefinger wants him useful. And Ned wants, above all, to keep him alive and unknown, which is the one thing the king's decree has made impossible. So Ned chooses honor, as he always chooses honor, and honor here means the direct path. He goes to Cersei. He tells her he knows what her children are. He gives her the mercy of a warning, a chance to flee, because he cannot make himself destroy children even to save the realm. He believes this is strength. It is the strength of a man who does not understand the board he stands upon. The betrayal comes fast and cold. Littlefinger's coin has bought the gold cloaks, but not for Ned. In the throne room, the steel turns the wrong way. Ned's men fall around him, and across the chamber, Jon fights, a boy with a Baratheon name and a Targaryen soul, cutting toward his father through a press of cloaks, shouting a word that is lost in the din. Hands seize him. Hands seize Ned. The king is dying above them, and below, the two truths and the boy who holds them both are dragged apart into the dark of the Red Keep's cells. What happens to a kingdom when the man at its center simply stops breathing? Robert Baratheon dies as he lived, loud and then suddenly silent, his great body ruined by a boar and a boy who overfilled his wineskin at exactly the moment the plan required. He dies in the great bed of the Red Keep, and the letter he signed with a failing hand names Eddard Stark as protector of the realm. That letter is a piece of parchment, nothing more, and parchment burns. Cersei understands this. She has always understood this. When Ned presents her with the king's seal, she takes the paper in her fingers, reads the words her dead husband intended as a chain upon her, and tears it into pieces. "This is Robert's will," she tells him, "and the words mean nothing now that the man who spoke them is meat." It is the same tearing that happened in the world we know, but in this world, there is a complication she must weigh in the same breath, and the complication has a name, and the name is Jon Baratheon. Consider her position, because Cersei considers it with the cold precision of a woman who has spent her whole life counting enemies. She has Ned in a cell already. Ned is a northern lord, distant, cold, unloved by the small folk of King's Landing who have never seen his face. But Jon is different. Jon has ridden in the tourneys they cheered at. Jon has been legitimized by royal decree, walked the street of silk and the street of steel, given coin to beggars because Robert taught him that a Baratheon should be seen giving. The people know him. The people love him in the small and dangerous way that crowds love a brave young man with a good sword arm and a sad past. To execute him in the same hour she seizes the crown for Joffrey is to hand the mob a martyr, and a martyr can pull down a throne faster than an army. So she does not kill him, not yet. She has him held in a chamber apart, comfortable enough that no one can call it cruelty, guarded enough that no one can call it freedom. She tells herself, this is patience. It is fear, wearing patience as a mask. She does not yet know whether killing this boy strengthens Joffrey's fragile claim or shatters it. And until she knows, the safest move is no move at all. A piece left on the board. A piece she will use or sacrifice when the shape of the game becomes clear. Into that comfortable cell comes a soft man in soft slippers, and he makes no sound at all. Varys arrives the way he always arrives, as if the walls had exhaled him. He brings sweets and wine and a manner of concern, so warm it feels almost genuine. He asks the boy how he fares. He speaks of Ned in the black cells below, of the shifting winds in the court above, of loyalty and its uses, and all the while he watches. What Varys wants is not comfort, but information. He wants to measure the shape of the boy's heart. Does Jon burn for revenge? Does he plot escape? Would he serve a Lannister crown to keep his head, or die spitting on it? These are the questions the spider turns over, as a jeweler turns a stone toward the light. And then he says, the thing that lands in Jon's chest, like a stone dropped down a well. You are more than a Baratheon, Varys tells him. He says it gently. He says it as one might mention the weather. And when Jon asks what he means, the eunuch only smiles and folds his hands and speaks of how blood remembers what men forget, of dragons and wolves and the strange fortunes of orphaned boys. He does not finish the thought. He does not need to. He leaves the seed in the dark of Jon's mind, knowing it will grow, knowing that a boy who suspects he is something other than what the world names him becomes, in time, a piece of enormous value on a board only the spider can see in full. Above them all, on cushions laid over cold black iron, a golden boy takes his father's seat. Joffrey ascends the Iron Throne, and his mother whispers counsel he does not want. She tells him mercy is a blade. She tells him that Ned Stark, seen to bend, seen to confess treason and take the black, is worth 10 times a corpse. Joffrey hears her. Joffrey ignores her. He is a king now, and a king does what pleases him, and what pleases him is to summon Eddard Stark to the steps of the Great Sept, and to have his ward brought too. Bring the bastard-turned-brother, he says, the one who shamed me. Let him watch. Let him learn what happens to those who lift a hand against their prince. So Jon is dragged in chains to the plaza before the sept, set where he cannot look away. Ned stands upon the steps, gaunt, broken enough to speak the words they fed him. Sansa is there, and Sansa cries out for mercy, and for one trembling moment, the crowd believes mercy will come. Joffrey's small mouth curves. He looks at Jon, he looks at Sansa, and then he speaks a single word, and Sir Ilan Payne draws the great sword called Ice from its scabbard. What follows next happens in the space of a single breath, and yet it stretches across every year of Jon's life that remains. The blade rises, the blade falls, and the head of Eddard Stark, the man who was never his father in blood, but was always his father in every way that mattered, tumbles from his shoulders onto the pale stone steps. The crowd roars. Some cheer, some scream. Sansa faints, or is dragged away, and Jon does not see which, because Jon has stopped seeing anything at all. There is only the sword, there is only the red, there is only the sound that leaves his own throat, a sound he does not recognize, a sound that belongs to a wolf and not a boy. Consider the mind of Varys in this moment, while the mob surges and the gold cloaks strain to hold the plaza. The spider watches from the shadow of a colonnade, and he is not watching the corpse. He is watching the boy in chains. He is calculating. A dead man is a dead man, and there is no play left in Eddard Stark. But the ward, the bastard Robert Baratheon lifted from obscurity, named, raised at court, seated near the throne, that is a piece still on the board. That is a piece worth a great deal to the right player, and Varys has spent a lifetime becoming the right player. So the eunuch moves, not with haste, for haste betrays intention, but with the smooth inevitability of a man who arranged this contingency days before the axe ever fell. A guard already bribed, a chain already fitted with a lock that will yield to the correct key. In the confusion of the execution, when every eye faces the sept, and no eye faces the alley behind it, two men in gold cloaks take Jon by the arms and pull him backward through a servant's gate, and the boy is too shattered to resist, too hollowed by grief to understand that he is being saved. They take him down. Beneath the Red Keep, the tunnels run like veins beneath skin, older than the castle above them, carved by Maegor's builders, and by builders whose names are lost. The air is cold and wet, and tastes of stone. Torchlight throws their shadows monstrous against the walls. Jon stumbles between his handlers, and somewhere in that descent, the grief begins to curdle into something else, something hotter, something that will not weep. Rage is a warmer companion than sorrow, and Jon takes it gladly, because sorrow would break him, and rage will keep him standing. But before the tunnels swallow him entirely, there is a moment at a grate above the street, a narrow slit of daylight, and through it Jon sees her. Arya, his sister, his fierce little sister, darting through the panicked crowd with her hair cut short and a butcher's boy nowhere to be seen, running the way a hunted thing runs. He lunges toward the grate. He calls her name, or tries to, but a gloved hand clamps over his mouth, and an arm like iron locks around his chest. She is there. She is right there, and he cannot reach her. The men hold him until she is gone into the throng. A recruiter of the Night's Watch, a rough man named Yoren, has already taken her by the collar, has already turned her north with a lie stitched onto her tongue. Varys knows this. Varys has accounted for the girl too. and judged her beyond his need. She scatters one way, Jon is carried another. The pack that Eddard Stark spent his life holding together comes apart in a single afternoon, flung to the four winds of a war that has not yet begun to burn. At the mouth of the tunnels, where a horse waits and the city walls give way to open road, Varys is there. Of course he is there. He appears as such men always appear, without footstep or announcement, his soft hands folded into his sleeves. Jon looks at him with eyes gone flat and dangerous. "Why?" Jon says. "Only that." The eunuch regards him the way a man regards an investment. "Robert Baratheon gave you a name," Varys says softly. "He gave you a place at his table and a title to wear. But a name is not a bloodline, sweet boy. Robert gave you the first. He could never give you the second." He lets the words settle. He watches them land. Jon's hands tighten. "Then whose blood do I carry?" "That," Varys murmurs, "is the question your father died protecting. And he died protecting it because the answer is worth more than the Iron Throne itself, more than kingdoms." He steps back and the shadows begin to take him. "Ride north. Trust no crown, and do not ask me again, for I will not tell you here. Where the stones have ears I do not own." He does not finish the thought. He does not need to. He simply melts into the dark, and Jon is left with a horse, a road, and a secret shaped like a hole in the center of his own life. He mounts. He turns the animal north, toward the only home he has left, and he rides carrying nothing but grief and fury, and a single, unanswered question that will, in time, remake the world. What if a boy who spent his whole life uncertain of where he belonged were handed, in a single moment, the very thing he had always craved, and chose to give it away? Far to the north, in the muddy sprawl of an army camp outside the Twins, that question is already taking shape, though no one there yet knows its full weight. The banners of the North have been called, and they have answered. 10,000 men, and then 20, and then more, gathering under the gray direwolf of House Stark, because a father sits imprisoned in a southern cell, and his son will not leave him there to die. Robb Stark is young. Robb Stark is untested. And yet, the lords who follow him have begun to look at him differently, because grief has a way of aging a boy into something harder, and war has a way of demanding it. Consider the moment as it unfolds inside the great hall, torches guttering, the assembled lords of the North pressed shoulder to shoulder in their furs and their old iron. Great Jon Umber is the first to draw steel, but he does not draw it against Robb. He draws it to lay at Robb's feet. "What if," he roars, "they bent no more to a southern throne that took their liege and would take his head? What if the North remembered what it had once been, a kingdom, whole and free, ruled by kings who called no man master?" The cry goes up, "King in the North! King in the North!" And Robb Stark, who came here to save his father, finds himself proclaimed a king instead. He does not want the crown. That is the first thing to understand about him. He wants his father back, alive and whole, riding home along the King's Road with the family intact. But wanting is not the same as choosing, and the lords have chosen for him, and a man who refuses a crown offered in earnest by hard men who have sworn their lives to him does not keep their loyalty long. So he accepts, and in the accepting, he becomes something he never asked to be. And then the rider comes. He comes at a gallop, mud-spattered and hollow-eyed, and the message he carries lands in two pieces, each one heavier than the last. The first is that Eddard Stark is dead, not imprisoned, not held for ransom, dead. The second, arriving in the same breath, is stranger still. Jon Snow lives. Jon Snow, who rode south years ago to be fostered at Robert Baratheon's table, has been legitimized by the king's own hand. He is no longer Snow. He is Baratheon now, or was, and he is coming north to fight. Watch how the hall goes still. Watch how the lords exchange glances, because this is not simple news, and they are not simple men. A legitimized Baratheon, a boy raised at Ned Stark's hearth, who now carries a stag's name and a claim, however thin, to the very throne their new king has just declared his freedom from. Some of them see a weapon in that, some of them see a threat, and the smartest of them see both at once and understand that the difference between the two will be decided in the days to come. Jon reaches the host 3 nights later, and the reunion is not the one either brother imagined. There is no laughter in it, no easy warmth of boyhood restored. There is only grief, shared between them like a single cloak too small for 2 men. And beneath the grief, a question neither wants to speak aloud. Robb embraces him, calls him brother, as he always has. But the lords are watching, and Jon feels their eyes, and he understands what those eyes are asking. Do you want it? They are asking. The throne, the crown your king father might have meant to give you. Stannis and Renly tear at each other in the south. A third stag might tip the scales, so the whispers go, in the corners of the camp, among ambitious men who see in Jon a card yet to be played. Jon plays it himself, and he plays it in the only way that ends the game. He kneels before the assembled lords, before Robb, before Catelyn Stark, who has never trusted him, and watches now with a face carved from suspicion. Jon draws his sword and lays it at his brother's feet, and swears himself a bannerman of House Stark. No southern ambition, no claim pressed, no crown sought. He names himself sworn to the king in the north, to fight and bleed and die under the direwolf and nothing else. And the words are not calculation. That is what disarms them. The words are the truest thing he has ever said. Catelyn watches, and something in her chest shifts that she did not expect and cannot quite name. She has spent years hating this boy for what he represented. She has never once seen him as this, a man choosing family over a crown, belonging over ambition, love over the vast cold arithmetic of thrones. Her hands, folded before her, loosen slightly, and when the northern lords roar their approval, when they take Jon as one of their own at last, she does not join them. But she does not look away either. What if the answer a man spends his whole life searching for is buried in stone he has walked past 1,000 times? What if the truth of who he is has always been waiting, patient and cold, in the dark beneath his mother's home? The campaign slows in the deep of winter, the way all campaigns slow when the snows come and the roads turn to treachery, and even ambition must pause to feed its horses. And in that lull, when the host makes camp within reach of Winterfell's gray walls, Jon rides ahead. He tells Robb he goes to pay respects at the crypts. That is not a lie. It is simply not the whole of the truth. Varys's riddle has followed him south to north like a burr caught in wool, worrying at him in the small hours, and he has come to the one place where answers might sleep among the dead. The crypts are older than memory. The kings of winter stand in their long rows, stone faces watching stone-eyed, as Jon descends with a torch that throws his shadow monstrous against the vaulted dark. He knows the way. He has always known the way to her, Lyanna Stark, dead before he drew breath. And yet the pull toward her tomb has lived in him since he was a boy, who could not explain why he wept before a statue he had no reason to mourn. And there is Bran. Bran, who should not be here, whose broken body lies leagues away, and who is here all the same, in the way that Bran now moves through the world, through roots and leaves and the pale bark of weirwoods, a boy grown into something more than a boy. He speaks in Jon's mind like water beneath ice. He tells him to look. He tells him where their father hid the thing he never meant to say aloud. Behind the statue, in a cavity worn smooth and sealed with wax gone brittle, Jon finds the letter, Ned's hand. Ned's careful, sorrowing hand, written for a day of need he prayed would never come. And Jon reads it there in the trembling light, and the world he has stood upon his whole life slides quietly out from beneath him. He is not Ned Stark's bastard. He is not Robert Baratheon's fostered ward. He is the son of Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark, born of a marriage sworn beneath a weirwood in a southern tower. True-born, legitimate, the last dragon in the world's cold flesh. His mother did not run. She did not betray. She loved, and she died bearing the proof of it. And with her last breath, she made her brother swear to hide the child from the man who would surely murder him. And Ned kept that promise for 20 years. Kept it through Robert's laughter and Robert's love. Kept it even unto his own death. Jon sits with the letter and does the arithmetic no man should have to do. Robert Baratheon legitimized him. Robert Baratheon, who crushed dragons' skulls and toasted the deaths of infants, who would have opened Jon's throat with his own hand had he known the blood running through it. That man raised him at his hearth and gave him a name and called him son. The irony is so vast and so cruel that Jon does not laugh and does not weep. He only breathes. In, out, the torch gutters. And his grief for Ned, the grief that has ridden his back since the news came, transforms in the crypt's cold. It is no longer only sorrow, it is understanding. Every distance Ned kept, every silence, every hard word and harder love, all of it reads now in a different light. Ned lied to protect him. Ned bore the shame of a bastard son that was never his, wore that dishonor like a cloak, so that Jon might live. There is no lie left to forgive. There is only a debt too large to name. He decides quickly. He decides the way he was raised to decide, weighing the realm against the self. If this truth were known, it would fracture everything. It would make him a claimant, a rival, a wedge driven between him and the brother he has just sworn himself to. It would arm Robb's enemies and divide Robb's friends and set the North to arguing over a crown when the North needs every sword pointed one way. So Jon folds the letter and holds it to the torch and watches his own claim to the greatest seat in the world curl black and drift away as ash. The secret dies with the parchment. He will keep it. He will be no dragon. He will be a bannerman, sworn and true, and nothing more. But Bran is not finished. Through the weirwood, through the roots that thread the crypt's deep stone, the boy speaks again, and his voice is older than winter. He tells Jon of a cold that gathers beyond the wall. He tells him of dead things walking, of blue eyes in the dark, of a war beside which the war for the Iron Throne is a squabble of children. He tells Jon that the Game of Thrones is not the game that matters. And Jon, kneeling in the ash of his own erased crown, feels something turn in him toward the far and frozen north. What if a man could see a truth so clearly that it cost him everything, and still choose the harder path because it was the honest one? Stannis Baratheon is such a man. On Dragonstone, in a chamber lit by braziers that never quite drive off the sea cold, he reads the accounts brought to him by a whispering spider's remnants and by Jon Arryn's old inquiries, and he understands. Joffrey is no Baratheon, nor Tommen, nor Myrcella. They are the get of a brother and sister, incest-crowned and calling itself king. And there is more. There is a name attached to a legitimization that Robert set to parchment before he died, a bastard raised at King's Landing and made a Baratheon in law. Jon. Stannis reads that too, and his jaw works, and something in him calculates. He is not a warm man, he does not pretend to be, but he is a man who counts, and the counting tells him that his claim, righteous as it is thin in swords. So he sends an envoy north with an offer dressed as a kindness, recognition, kinship, a Baratheon standing beside a Baratheon against the Lannister lie. Support my claim, the offer says beneath its courtesies, and I will name you brother in more than law. The envoy reaches Riverrun. Jon reads the letter, and Jon says no. He says no because he has already burned the greater claim, and this smaller one weighs nothing against the oath he swore to Robb. He says no because Stannis offers him a crown's shadow, when Jon has already decided he wants no crown at all. But the refusal has a price, and Jon knows it as he speaks it. He is dividing the only two forces that might, together, have broken the Lannisters. Stannis will not forgive it. The anti-Lannister cause, which needed unity above all, fractures along a fault line that runs straight through the Baratheon name. Two claimants who might have marched as one will now march apart, or not at all. Jon watches the envoy ride away and understands that he has kept his honor and weakened his brother's war in the same breath. There is no version of this where he keeps both. And in the Riverlands, a different calculation ripens toward blood. At the Twins, Walder Frey nurses a grievance that has festered into murder. Rose Bolton, that pale and patient man, has already made his arithmetic with Tywin Lannister, trading loyalty for Winterfell and a warden's title. They mean to end the king in the north at a wedding feast, under the guest rite, with bread eaten and salt shared, so that gods and men alike will know the sacredness broken. Robb rides toward the Twins to mend a slighted marriage pact, and he rides, as far as Frey and Bolton know, toward his own grave. But Jon rides with him, and Jon has learned, in a court of vipers, to read the space behind a smile. Something in Frey's welcome sits wrong. Too many armed men for a feast, too few Frey sons at the high table, a musician's gallery crowded with faces that watch the hall and not the bride. Jon says little, but he says it to Robb, quietly, over the rim of a cup he does not drink from. Keep your guard close. Keep your mail beneath your doublet. Do not let the great Jon send his men to drink in the far camps. Robb, who has come to trust his brother's caution the way one trusts a hand at one's back, listens. He does not know why. He does not need to. He posts men at the doors. He keeps steel within reach. So when the music turns and the drums begin the false-hearted rhythm that signals slaughter, the Northmen are not wholly unready. The crossbows loose from the gallery, and men die, yes, many men, good men, and the hall becomes a butchery. But Robb does not fall in the first volley, as the pattern once demanded. Jon is already moving, sword out, dragging his brother behind an overturned table as bolts thud into oak. A loyal core forms around them, umbers and household guard, and they cut toward a side door with the desperation of men who know the alternative. They fight free. They fight free into the rain and the dark and the churning ford. Not all of them. Catelyn falls, and with her, the last steadiness of Robb's court. Bannermen who followed the young wolf across 2 victories die on Frey blades. The king in the north rides out of the twins with a bolt in his shoulder and blood in his hair and grief closing over him like floodwater. But he rides out alive, and that alone rewrites everything the conspirators had counted upon. They retreat north into a homeland already betrayed. Word reaches them on the road. The Boltons have taken Winterfell, the flayed man raised over the walls Ned Stark built. Robb and Jon draw rein on a cold ridge and look at each other, 2 sons of one father standing together for the first time since that father's head fell in a distant square. Whatever crowns might once have divided them are ash and afterthought now. There is only the home their father died to protect, held by traitors, waiting. And Robb turns his ruined face north and says the name of the men who took it. The name is Bolton, and the retaking of Winterfell is not a battle of grand maneuver, but of quiet inevitability. The flayed man's cause was always built on borrowed strength, and borrowed strength has a way of being recalled. The Boltons held the north only so long as the Lannisters could reach it, and the Lannisters, stretched thin from the wall's shadow to the southern sea, with Stannis marching, and the crown's coffers hollowed by war and folly, can reach nothing anymore. Roose Bolton understood men who calculate. He did not understand men who come home. And so when Robb and Jon crest the final rise with the mountain clans behind them, and the northern lords who never bent, gathering to their banners like iron filings to a lodestone, the flayed banner does not so much fall as dissolve. Winterfell's own people open a gate. A bastard son turns on a father. The castle Ned Stark built receives his sons back the way the tide receives the shore, patiently, as though it had only ever been waiting. And in the great hall, beneath the gray banners restored, the lords of the north do a thing that would have been unthinkable a lifetime ago. They look at Jon Snow, and they offer him a crown. Consider what they know. Bran, in the long silence of the crypts and the longer silence of his visions, had told a careful few the truth carried out of Dorne and buried in a tower of joy, that the boy Robert Baratheon fostered out of grim conscience, the boy the whole realm believed a stain on Ned Stark's honor, was never Ned's son at all. He is Rhaegar's. He is the last dragon of a legitimate marriage, the ice and fire made flesh, the heir not merely to Winterfell's love, but to the Iron Throne itself. The northern lords are not fools. They see the pieces on the board. A king of the north they might make him, and behind that a claim to all 7 kingdoms that no Lannister forgery could match. They offer him everything, every crown he was ever denied, every legitimacy ever withheld, laid before him at last by men who would follow him into fire. And Jon refuses. He refuses not as a broken man refuses, not as one who has nowhere else to turn. He refuses as a man who has finally learned to read the whole board and seen where every crown leads. He had been the unwanted bastard at Winterfell's edge. He had been the legitimized Baratheon paraded in King's Landing under the cold eye of a king who loathed the blood in his veins. He had been the hidden Targaryen sought by every faction that wished to spend him like coin. He had worn every identity the realm could invent for him, and he had learned the single truth beneath them all. A crown is a claim upon others. The wall is a duty owed to everyone. And the boy who was fostered by a king to be watched and warded had spent those years at court learning exactly what kings become when they mistake the throne for the realm. He names Robb the king in the north. He places Winterfell's future in Stark hands, where it was always meant to rest. And he turns, not northward in exile, but northward in purpose, toward the black wall of ice that has stood since before there were crowns to argue over. Robb does not stop him. Robb, who understands his brother now, as he never quite did as a boy, only clasps his forearm in the old northern way and lets him go. The years that follow settle like snow after a storm, quietly, filling in the sharp edges the war had cut. Joffrey, whose cruelty was never the strategy his grandfather imagined, but merely appetite, unravels the Lannister triumph from within, spending loyalty faster than gold, until the throne he sat upon collapsed beneath the weight of its own overreach. The lion, stretched to breaking, breaks, and the North, independent at last, stands secure. Robb rules from Winterfell with the steadiness that grief taught him, and Bran beside him sees further than any king before, and Arya comes home at last, down the King's Road she once fled, a wolf returned to her pack. The home Ned Stark died to protect endures, not as a province of some southern crown, but as itself, whole and free. And on the wall, in the gray hours before a northern dawn, a man in black stands watch. He is the son of ice and fire, though few living know it. He was fostered once by a king who hated the very blood that made him, and from that single fateful request, a hard man's grim mercy, offered without love and accepted without joy, a different world unspooled. He might have been a bastard forgotten. He might have been a king contested. He is instead the shield of the realm, and he has found in that duty the one thing every crown had promised and none could give. Not power, not vindication, peace. The wind moves across the ice, and he does not flinch from it, for he knows at last exactly where he belongs and why, and that is enough, and it is quiet, and it is done. And this brings us to the end of this alternate history. If you enjoyed exploring how events might have unfolded differently, I'd really appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel. We dive into new stories from the world of Westeros every single day, imagining the choices, battles, alliances, and destinies that could have completely changed the fate of the Seven Kingdoms. I'd also love to hear your thoughts. What do you think would have happened next? Did this version of history end better than the original? Or would you have taken the story in a completely different direction? Leave your ideas in the comments, because many of the best future stories come directly from your suggestions. Thank you so much for watching and for spending your time with me. I'll see you tomorrow with another alternate history from Westeros. Until then, peace out.